We all know what happened on D-Day, but how many of us know what happened from the German side of the gun, where young, inexperienced soldiers had to stand their ground against a blackened sea of ships? In this video, we're going inside the bunkers, through the radio static, down to the muddy trenches, minute by minute. From the moment the sky split open at 4:45 a.m. to the final collapse of the German line by nightfall, this is every major moment of June 6th, told by the men who were trying to stop history from being made. Chapter 1: Thundering Dawn. It started with a sound I'd never heard before, not even during training, not even in Russia. It was like the sky had cracked open and decided to fall on top of us. I remember my eyes shooting open in the dark. My first thought wasn't war. It was that the earth itself was angry. The whole bunker was shaking. Dust poured from the ceiling. You could feel it on your chest. This deep rumble that made your ribs vibrate. Some of the boys screamed. Others didn't move at all, frozen like statues. I just stared at the ceiling and waited for it to collapse. At first, I thought it was another drill, maybe some naval artillery test. But then the pounding didn't stop. It didn't pause. It just kept going. Boom, boom, boom. Like some giant beast was stomping its way toward us, and we were just ants in its path. Then the radio came alive. Static first, then the words, "Feindlich Landung möglich." Possible enemy landing. That's all they said. No location, no commander's voice, just static again. I looked at my friend, Eric, and he looked back at me, eyes wide, his helmet still in his lap. Neither of us spoke, but we both understood. This wasn't a drill. This was it. They told us for months that they'd come, that the Atlantic Wall would hold. But no one told us it would start like this, with the sea pounding us before we ever saw a single enemy face. We didn't know where they were coming from. Now we knew. But it was already too late. Before we move on to the next section, please don't forget to subscribe if you've liked the video so far. Chapter 2: Watery Shadows. At 5:30, the sky had softened just enough for us to see the water. And that's when everything inside me dropped. The ocean. It wasn't blue anymore. It was steel. Just an endless wall of gray ships, packed so tight it looked like you could walk across their decks from one to the next. Transports, destroyers, gunboats, all crawling toward us like a living machine. One of the older guys, Kurt, I think, just whispered, "It's like Troy." I didn't get it at first, but then I realized we were the city, and they were the Greeks. I gripped the MG-42 in front of me like it was some kind of shield, but it felt pointless. I kept thinking, how do you stop that? How do you stop a sea full of guns? The worst part? We couldn't even fire. The range was too far. We just had to sit there and watch death come for us, slow and deliberate. Some of the boys were praying under their breath. Others cursed. A few just stared through their scopes, like they couldn't blink. I couldn't tell if my hands were trembling from the cold or from what I was seeing. Probably both. They told us we'd be ready. They told us the wall would hold. But no one talked about this part, when you're forced to wait, knowing full well that you're outnumbered, outgunned, and maybe already dead. We couldn't move, couldn't retreat, couldn't even scream. We were trapped behind our own defenses, staring out at the biggest invasion fleet the world had ever seen. And it just kept getting closer. Chapter 3. Cracking Wall. They told us the wall would hold. For months, that's what we heard. Impenetrable. Fortress Europe. Nothing gets through. And for a moment, I almost believed it. I wanted to believe it. We had bunkers carved into cliffs, fields of mines, steel obstacles in the surf, and machine guns lined up like dominoes. It looked invincible on paper. But paper doesn't bleed. The first landing craft hit the shore just after 6. At first, we opened fire like we were trained. Controlled burst, measured distance. Then the machine gun jammed. I cursed and tried to clear it, while Eric loaded a second belt. But by the time I looked up again, 3 more boats had hit the sand. Then 5, then 10. Rangefinders stopped working. Smoke from the bombardment still hung in the air, making it nearly impossible to see. And those who did come into view, they just kept coming. Some of them fell right away, torn apart by bullets or mines. But behind every one that dropped, 3 more charged forward. One of the mortars misfired and exploded behind us. A bunker door jammed shut from the pressure of debris. Radios were cutting in and out. Our so-called wall wasn't holding. It was collapsing, piece by piece. I kept firing, reloading, swearing, trying not to look at the bodies piling up near the water. But the truth was sinking in fast. This wasn't a test. This wasn't some skirmish. This was the real thing. And no matter what we built, no matter how many drills we'd run, we were never ready for this. Wave after wave they came, and the wall, the mighty Atlantic wall, was already cracking beneath our boots. Chapter 4. Disorder and Chaos. By 6:30, whatever plan we thought we had, it was gone. Just gone. The lieutenant had been shouting orders one minute, then vanished the next. Maybe he was hit. Maybe he ran. No one knew. I kept calling on the field radio, flipping between frequencies, begging for anything. Coordinates, fallback orders, reinforcements. All I got was static, then a scream, then more silence. The weirdest part? Some bunkers were still firing like nothing had changed. Others, just 100 meters away, were already overrun, silent, probably filled with the dead. There was no coordination, no chain of command, just pockets of men, scattered like broken glass, each doing their own thing. I remember hearing a machine gun from the next position suddenly stop. No misfire, no reload, just nothing. I stared in that direction, hoping someone would pop their head up, signal something. But no one did. And that silence, it was worse than the gunfire. Because that's when it hit me. We were on our own. No one was coming to help. No fresh troops. No Panzer Division riding in to save the day. It was just us. Boys with rifles and a bunker full of sandbags, trying to hold back the sea. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were just scared kids in uniform, trying not to be next. We had no idea where the enemy had landed or how far they'd gotten. For all we knew, they were already behind us. And that's when I stopped thinking about winning, or orders, or even the war. That's when everything narrowed down to one thing: survival. No maps, no glory, just me, my rifle, and whatever seconds I had left. Want to understand the world better? Start with history and subscribe to our channel. Chapter 5. Unbreakable Beach. By 7 o'clock, the beach should have been clear. That's what we were told. If the defenses held, the first waves wouldn't last more than 10 minutes. But this beach, it refused to break. I kept firing. I don't even remember reloading. Just this rhythm. Squeeze the trigger, duck from return fire, load another belt. My shoulder was bruised from the recoil, my ears ringing from the constant burst. And still, they kept coming. I saw men drop, some instantly, some writhing. But behind every one that fell, 2 more crawled forward, dragging the wounded with them. It was like trying to stop the ocean with a handful of sand. I lost track of time. It felt like we'd been shooting for hours, even though barely 20 minutes had passed. I didn't feel fear anymore, just this strange numbness, like my body was on autopilot and my brain had checked out. The horror was there, but distant, like I was watching someone else's nightmare. Every so often, something would jolt me back. A scream, a flash of blood, the sound of someone choking nearby. One time, I turned to shout to Eric, and he wasn't there. Just his helmet lying on its side. I didn't ask questions. I just couldn't. I just turned back to the sights and kept firing. The bodies were piling up along the wire. You couldn't even see the sand in some places. Just uniforms, scattered rifles, and broken men trying to crawl forward anyway. It didn't make sense. It should have broken them, but it didn't. They weren't stopping. They weren't turning back. And for the first time in my life, I started to believe something terrifying. Maybe we weren't the strong ones after all. Maybe we were just the first to break, and we didn't even know it yet. Chapter 6. Blazing Skies. By 8 o'clock, something shifted. For a brief moment, it almost felt like we had a chance. Some landing craft were still stuck in the surf. A few of our MGs were holding strong. Maybe we could push them back. That hope didn't last long. The first bomb landed behind us with a sound I can't describe, like the earth itself coughed. Then came another, and another. Suddenly, the sky was howling, and the ground was moving like water. Trees snapped in half. Bunkers shook like cardboard. A shell landed somewhere up the slope and lit the hill on fire. The heat hit me like someone slapped my face. I remember turning to shout something to the guy next to me, but he wasn't shouting back. He just looked at me, confused. I saw blood pooling beneath him. His legs were gone, clean off. I didn't even hear the blast that did it. Everything was dust. Dust in my eyes, in my throat, in my ears. I couldn't hear anything. This sharp ringing, like the world had been muffled by a giant hand. My helmet was half off, one of the straps torn. My hands were shaking, and I didn't even realize it. Before the shelling, there were these strange moments of silence, just long enough to think it might be over. And that silence, that false hope, was worse than the noise. Because you never knew when the next one would come. You just sat there, bracing. No orders, no targets, just survival, again. We had spent years building this wall, training for this day. But no one trained us for this part. For the fire from the sky, for the feeling of the world coming undone around you, and knowing there was nothing you could do to stop it. Chapter 7. Steel Meets Flesh. By 9:30, the unthinkable happened. They were past the seawall. I don't know how they made it. Mines, tank traps, barbed wire. We'd built a nightmare on the beach, but somehow they pushed through it, crawled over bodies, under fire, through smoke thick enough to choke you, and now they were climbing, fast. I saw one first, just a helmet bobbing behind a crater, then 3 more, then a dozen. They were up the slope, on our level, and we had nothing left to throw at them. No grenades, no mortars, just rifles and whatever nerves we had left. I fired, missed, fired again. Someone screamed, and I ducked. When I turned, I saw Emil, my friend since basic training, get hit in the chest. He fell backward like a puppet with the strings cut, his helmet spinning off and rolling into the trench. My heart was pounding so loud, I couldn't even hear my own shots. They were everywhere now, moving fast, spreading out, flanking. The line wasn't breaking all at once. It was tearing slowly, meter by meter, like fabric being ripped by hand. Every position that fell opened a new wound in the defense. We couldn't hold it. We couldn't even see where they were coming from anymore. The smoke and chaos made everything look the same. Friendly, enemy, alive, dead. There was no plan now, just instinct. Run, fire, duck, repeat. We had always imagined we'd die behind those walls, holding strong. But now the wall wasn't a wall at all. It was just dirt and bodies, and it was slipping away under our boots. And for the first time that day, I felt in my gut. We were losing, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. Chapter 8. The Last Orders. Between 10 o'clock and noon, someone, somewhere, still thought we could push them back. They called it a counterattack, forming Kampfgruppen, they said. Small fighting units, mixed together from whatever was left. But it wasn't some elite force. It was just more like us, artillery crew without guns, cooks with rifles, messengers turned riflemen, all pulled from nearby villages, thrown together, and pointed inland like that would fix anything. I was ordered to regroup with what was left of the 3rd Company. Half the men were strangers. One guy had no helmet. Another had a bandage around his leg and couldn't walk properly. We tried to flank around the advancing Americans, some woods to the south, maybe a ridge for cover. But as soon as we crossed the hedgerow, the radio screamed with panic. One of the other groups ran right into a Sherman. We heard it before we saw it, that low growl of the engine, the mechanical clatter of threads crushing stone. Then, boom, a direct hit. Then another. Someone screamed through the headset. Something about fire. Someone burning alive. Then static. That was the end of their group. We didn't even get close. No coordination, no intel. We were just moving blind, hoping we were flanking, when really, we were probably circling into more gunfire. Some of the boys started drifting away, not running, just walking, disappearing into the trees, like they couldn't take one more minute of this. I didn't blame them. This wasn't a counterattack. It was desperation. It was throwing bodies into the fire and hoping it would go out. We weren't taking ground anymore. We weren't defending it either. We were just trying to find a place where we might last a few more hours, or at least die without screaming. Chapter 9. Deadly Silence. By evening, the beach didn't look like a battlefield anymore. It looked like the end of the world. The bunkers were rubble. The trenches were gone, flattened or filled with the dead. The air still smelled like fire and blood and metal, but the noise, that had stopped. No more shelling, no more shouting. just this eerie silence, broken only by the occasional distant shot or someone moaning in the distance. I was sitting in a crater, hugging my rifle like it still meant something. My hands were shaking, not from fear, at least not anymore, but from exhaustion, the kind that sinks into your bones. I hadn't eaten. I couldn't remember the last time I drank water. My ears were ringing so loud, it felt like the world had been muted. Some of the men surrendered. Others just wandered into the woods, disappearing without a word. No one tried to stop them. What would have been the point? The lines we were supposed to hold didn't exist anymore. It was just a beachhead. It was just scorched earth. We weren't defending anything. We were just survivors now. I remember staring up at the sky as it darkened, wondering how many of us were left, wondering if this was really the same war we'd trained for, the same war they told us we were ready for. Because what I saw that day didn't feel like war. It felt like erasure, like something ancient being swallowed whole. They say June 6th was a victory, that the tide turned, that freedom landed on that beach. Maybe that's true, but for us, it wasn't a beginning. It was an ending. And no one ever asked what it felt like to lose that day. Until now. But what would you do if you were a young soldier on that beach with no choice, no voice, and no way out? Would you fight to the end? Or would you run? Let us know in the comments below. Here's another video history buffs enjoyed watching. Goodbye for now.